Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Drew Carter alongside, and it's another day. It's another Garden Report. We're in the playoff mode. I think we're going to mostly be going daily at this point the rest of the way, reacting to games, previewing games, and we've had a long time to preview this one, Drew. But it's almost here. We're 2 days away from the tip-off on Sunday. The defense run here of Banner 18 on to 19, hopefully for the Celtics here. And an interesting spot to start it off with the Magic. And, I've done some stuff with some Orlando people at this point. We've done some stuff with ourselves, looking ahead at the series. And not super intriguing, but, Jaylen said it a couple of years ago. It's a weird team. It's an unorthodox team. It's a team that's actually played the Celtics pretty well these last few years here. And, I've watched a lot of tape at this point, Drew. I've dove into the numbers, and there's not, especially with a couple injuries on the Magic side, a ton of hopefully Orlando competing in this one. But my gut tells me this will be a tougher series than I think many people will expect, just because of how hard this team plays.
Yeah, I could see it being like an Indiana series last year where the number of games doesn't indicate that it was a really tough series. But if you watch the games and look at the box scores, you would know that it's different. The Magic are one of, I think, 4 teams that the Celtics actually lost the season series to.
Yeah,
Atlanta's in that bucket as well. And the Hawks season series was weird because there was a game in there where the Celtics really wanted it clearly, and pretty much everyone was healthy. That was that NBA Cup game. And then Oklahoma City obviously was the one team the Celtics didn't beat, and I think Indiana took the season series from the Celtics as well. So those are the teams.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana is the team. Thankfully, they're on the other side of the bracket. That's actually the team outside of Cleveland that, to me, is scariest, just because they play such a weird style. But with that being said, I mean, I think the Magic are kind of weird as well, like you said, just in a different way. Like Indy plays super fast, really good ball movement team, really good cutting team, obviously very well coached. The Magic are just tough as hell, gritty, and a great defensive team. I don't think they have nearly enough offensively to really threaten the Celtics, but I do think they could make the series difficult. And the Celtics have problems in that building for whatever reason. I think it's 4 of the last 6 that they've lost in Orlando. And one of them was right before Christmas. That was the one where Tatum was a super late scratch. We had no idea he wasn't going to play until right before. And I feel like I did a bad job because we just couldn't explain it. We didn't know why he was not. Turned out it was an illness, but he had been there, and it was a total shock that he didn't play. They were missing Banchero and Franz Wagner. That was at the time where they had both torn their right oblique, which is one of the craziest injury things that's ever happened to a team in a season. Both of their best players had the same thing at the same time. Mo Wagner had just torn his ACL, and we're going in there we're going to roll this team, right? Because they have nobody, and Jalen Suggs and a band of misfits just took it to the Celtics, and that is what would give me concern in terms of getting through this series unscathed and looking ahead to the future. Is they are tough, they are gritty, they are well coached, and they are not afraid. So it might be a little closer than the game number would indicate.
Yeah, and they've actually lost 4 straight to them in Orlando when you look back to 2023. And the last game they won, which was their 10th straight win overall against the Magic when they were coming out of that rebuild. Noah Vonleh started for the Celtics. Smart, Brown, Tatum, White, Grant, Brogdon, whole different team back then, last time they won in Orlando. So, you had that weird game a week or 2 ago where no one played. I actually thought that one looked worse for Orlando than Boston, because even though the Celtics lost with everyone resting, Magic still didn't hit 100. And that's where I look at this and I'm still like, I think the Magic will be tough, but it's hard to imagine them winning a single game with that offense. And, you could throw it to Dick Life, I'm sure. Has any team ever entered the playoffs 27th or lower in offense? I can't imagine that. It's unreal how bad they are offensively and how well they've played. I guess it makes sense because they're second in defense. But that offense is ugly. I still think, to your point there about Powell and Franz, they're probably still feeling the after effects of that. No Suggs here, no Mo Wagner, who's been really good for them in this matchup when they've had success against Boston. So I'm with you. I think like Pacers style, maybe a sweep, maybe 5 games. I do think though the Jaylen factor is going to tell us a lot early. Like, how's he look? Where's he at? Practice signs were pretty positive this week, but when I was watching, especially that first game you mentioned where Tatum went out, Brown did a lot of heavy lifting in that game, a lot of transition opportunities he created against a team that wants to play slow. And, he's, I think, one of the more physical guys on this team, too. If you're going to try to meet that physical challenge against Orlando, he's a pretty good candidate to be in the mix on that. And Porzingis, I think, is important here, too.
Yeah, Jaylen, to me, and that's the number one question I've gotten from people heading into the playoffs is, what do we think of Jaylen? And I am like, I don't really have any inside scoop here, but I think that what we've seen in practice is encouraging. And I also think that he knows his body, and the training staff, specifically Drew Moore, who's kind of his guy, they know his body enough where I think there was always a plan here, and maybe the plan shifted a little bit if he didn't feel as good as he expected to. But I've always felt the same way. Like when people were getting upset that it seemed like he was just playing to hit the 65, I always felt like that was a little unfair. Like I would just ask those people, do you have any idea how many sports scientists and trainers travel with the Celtics? Like this is a multi-million-dollar thing in the NBA that every team has a huge staff, and even the amount of equipment that travels with the team, Bobby, is like insane. I don't think anybody has an idea of how much stuff and how many people are devoted to this specific thing, which is managing injuries and knowing when and how much you can play. And my suspicion is that he figured, and the training staff figured, he wasn't going to make it worse by playing, and it's not going to get better with 2 weeks of rest. So we might as well feel it out and get used to it. And then at a certain point, he didn't need to play anymore. And I could be totally wrong with that. Maybe he did just want to hit the 65. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. But to me, I think he's going to be ready to go. And I don't know what percentage he's going to be, but I still think he'll be effective. The question to me is, what's he going to look like defensively? Because he still had some pretty good games offensively. I'm not saying they were all great, but he still had some pretty good games offensively when he was clearly hindered by the knee. Defensively is where I think you're right. They're going to need his physicality. And that's where I do think the knee really impacted him. And he was not as engaged or forceful as we've seen him typically. But overall, Bobby, I feel good. That's why I'm wearing my Juice shirt. I think he'll be ready to go for game one. That's my guess. And if he's not, I think that he'll be ready to go when the Celtics need him, almost like Porzingis last year.
Yeah, and I feel good about the clips we saw out of practice. I know that's selective. Like you can pick the best of out of there. I don't think we were going to see him aching if he was at practice in that highlight tape the team puts out. But the fact that he was out there and involved right after the shot, and the shot, I think that he received, whatever it was, guys usually respond well to that for some amount of time. So I don't think that's going to be as big of a question in the first round. How does he look coming back from that? It would be down the line when that starts to wear off. Is there still any lingering effects of that later in the playoffs, having to play every other day once we get into that? It's always the case, Drew, but health is the only question we really have with this team, other than some of the tougher matchups that have emerged around the league for them that'll come later. Round one, Orlando, round two, even Detroit, New York. It's just how healthy are you? And if you're healthy, you're probably going to roll through those first two rounds at the very least.
Well, that's the thing about it. That's the key point is you just hope that it doesn't get worse.
Right.
And neither of us is a doctor. I was actually trying to get some information about what exactly a right posterior impingement of
That's the other thing.
is.
We don't really know what the injury is, I feel like.
So here's what I can tell you. The posterior means the back.
Okay.
And impingement can mean a couple different things, and it can have a couple of different causes, but essentially it's discomfort, right? And that's no surprise if you've watched him out there. Like you can tell that his knee is bothering him. And the key is, can he re-aggravate it? and Will playing on it make it worse. Those are the two things. And if either of those is true, I would think about holding him out for the entire first round. Because I don't know that Orlando could beat the Celtics even without Jaylen. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you saw the second game. If you go back and watch that one, the one in Boston, Tatum just torched them. So
Yeah.
I think he'd be more than enough. I think Porzingis dominated this matchup too. You know, if they're going to switch and try to take the threes away from the Celtics, he's going to have Cole Anthony and Anthony Black and, you know, those guards on him. And that's easy work for him. So I think the offenses in this matchup are just so far apart that even without Brown, you know, you're going double big at that point. Maybe you're a little slower. Maybe that plays in Orlando's hands, but they could get through. I don't think there's any doubt. I think they, in a very difficult series, could get through round two, too. You know, his team's won a lot of games without Jaylen. They've won a lot of games without various players over the last couple of years here with their depth. And, you know, I'm looking at that, too, a little bit in this series. Pritchard, Hauser, Cornette, those guys, how do they do against this defense? How involved are they? Like, I think you're not worried about Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis in this matchup against that Magic defense. How do the other guys look? Like, I think White had some trouble in this matchup. Holiday, like, is he about to turn it up for the playoffs here now that he got through the regular season and all the injuries he dealt with? And then the bench guys, of course, like, are we going to see the same Luke we saw in the regular season compared to the playoffs? Like, I can't wait to see those questions answered round one, because I think we're all pretty confident in Jaylen if he's healthy, Jason certainly, and even Porzingis, what we saw from him this year at full health. And I know there's a health question there all the time, but I think the starters on this team have mostly answered any questions we might have had about them going back to last year, and obviously with the championship.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think the team is better this season. I know that's been like a common...
We've been debating that all year, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a common conversation. But I don't know how you can deny that they are better. If you look at how Pritchard has improved, I mean, there was a time where Scal and I were thinking, hey, he's going to win Sixth Man of the Year. Could he also win Most Improved Player? Now, that probably wouldn't happen with just how people fill out the ballot. They don't want to list the same guy twice.
But Cade had a wild year.
Who? Cada?
Cade Cunningham.
Oh, Cade? Yeah.
I wasn't going Cada for most
Cada did have a wild year. He's not Most Improved, though. Cade, yeah, I mean, Most Improved, I think, is a different discussion. I would vote for Dyson Daniels, but the only reason I bring that up is because of how much better Pritchard is than last year, that we were even kicking that idea around. Then there's Cornette, who might even be more improved than Pritchard is. I think Hauser's a better player this year than he was last year. Torrey Craig gives a nice little bump. Like, I think that the bench is better, but the question is, can those guys play in the postseason? Because, you know, they haven't really done it before. I think Luke can still be effective just with his size and activity. The one thing about Cornette is probably his best attribute this season has been offensive rebounding. And I do think that's going to be harder in the playoffs because guys will just be more locked in and more physical, especially against Orlando. Like, Orlando's a pretty good rebounding team. So that would be the only thing that gives me pause with Luke potentially playing in the playoffs. Pritchard, I feel like those guys have both earned it, though, and both proven it to the point that I don't really question if they're going to be in the rotation. I think they will be.
They will be. And I'm actually really confident in Luke, especially in the early rounds. Like, I think this is a double big series. I think New York, Detroit are both double big series. I think he's going to play a lot, especially when you consider how good he's been with Tatum. And that, to me, we're going to do our favorite moments of the year coming up. I think my favorite stat of the year, a thing we tracked all year, that sort of thing, is how good Tatum and Cornette played together. And that became such a big part of the team down the stretch that I almost feel like you have to force feed Luke minutes. Like, the way he's screening for Tatum, the way he's empowering Tatum, how good those minutes have been, especially when you have some room for error here early in the postseason. I think you might want to see if you can get Cornette in there for 15, 20 minutes a game, you know, in this series, maybe even round two. And they don't have as many depth wings. So you're going to play bigger. You're going to play Horford and Cornette together a little bit. You're going to play Cornette and Porzingis together a little bit. And that was a dominant defensive duo. So I think the one thing that's going to surprise people, Drew, this postseason, like, as people start to tune into this team, you know, nationally, and maybe people who didn't watch every game during the year, I think they're going to be blown away by how much better Luke is. Like, I think that's going to stun people. How much he's playing, how good he looks, how impactful he is. Playoffs are a different game, but I think he's legitimately taken a leap this year.
It's undeniable, Bobby. If you look at his metrics, I just feel like you can't keep him off the floor. I know the playoffs are a different game, but look how good he is. But he's third in net rating, dude. The rest of the top 6 or 7 all plays for Oklahoma City. And then there's Luke Cornett. It's not Jason Tatum. It's not Jaylen Brown. It's not anybody from Cleveland. It's Luke Cornett, who has improved immensely this season. He spent a ton of time in the G League early in his NBA career, completely transformed his game from when he was in college and early on in the pros completely. And I get fired up talking about the guy because I'm so stoked for him. And he's such an interesting and cool dude and just different from the person you typically run into in the NBA. Like, Luke is just different. He thinks the game, he thinks life in a way that is rare. And so it makes me happy to see that he's gotten so much run this year and so much shine, and that Celtics fans have fallen in love with him so much. And, we've fallen in love with him on the broadcast. I think Scal thinks Luke can like walk on water at this point because of, but dude, the pick and roll chemistry he has with Tatum, here's where I'll give Scal credit, is he points out the granular stuff that we just wouldn't think about, as layman basketball fans. Watch Luke Cornett get in and out of screens. His feel for when to slip the screen, ghost the screen, whatever term you want to use, how long to stay in it. And we're talking about fractions of a second that make a huge difference here. Those guys they've unlocked a new level. It's the second best pick and roll duo in the NBA behind Murray and Jokic. That's insane. This is a guy in Luke Cornett who was like on the fringe of the league a couple of years ago. And for him to be this now, like his improvement and Pritchard's improvement, along with, the rest of the roster getting older, and the only guys you worry about being old, Holiday and Horford, actually seem to be getting better with age, especially Al. And then Holiday after the trade deadline has been incredible. I do feel like the team is better this season than last season. So we could see, maybe they just flip it and run through everybody again. I don't think that's going to happen because the competition is better and healthier. But I do think as it pertains to the Celtics, they are better than last season.
I've leaned that way a little bit too. January was shaky. There were some moments in December where you're like, but they turned it up. They were clearly managing, trying stuff throughout the 2. And now we're going to see what the playoffs looks like. And I think there's a nice starting point for them. Like, I think every game is going to be so difficult against this team that it's just a nice starting point, nice test. It's the second best defense. And obviously we're all looking ahead to Oklahoma City to some degree here, who is one of the best defenses in recent memory. So I think it's a good test. I've been debating with fans, like, do you take the easier path, least resistance, or do you want to see some tests? Do you want to see this team really challenge? And obviously, from my seat, I want to see this team challenge. I want to see them go through some stuff here on the way. And, I wasn't one of the easiest path ever people last year, but they got some major breaks. There's no doubt about it. So, I think Porzingis said it the other day, they're anticipating a harder path to repeating this time. And I don't think there's any doubt about that when you look around the league and who could pop up in their way. I want to take a quick break to let people know about Game Time. If you want to be in the house on Sunday, Game Time has your tickets and panoramic views of your seat, which is my favorite feature over there. You can see where you're sitting. Might be unfamiliar territory for you, especially if you're heading over to Fenway. Baseball is back as well. No hockey playoffs in Boston this year, which feels really weird. But you got all kinds of concerts and events coming up. Summertime, there's always a ton going on, and Game Time has your seats to all of it. Go over there, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. And go check out all their great features, all in pricing. I love that one. You know what you're going to be paying ahead of time, but no surprise fees at checkout. And then all kinds of zone and flash deals going on over there as well. They'll let you know what kind of deal you're getting, all that stuff over there at Game Time. So again, download it, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So I was really looking forward to this, Drew. I think a year or 2 ago, I made a list of 100 moments from the season, and I was able to get there very easily. This year was a little trickier for me, but there were still some ones that really stand out. I know you came up with 4, so I'll punt it to you first. What was one of your favorite moments of the season from your seat?
Well, I'm glad you asked it like that from my seat because this is a bit of a selfish one. But
Okay.
the first huge game of the season, and maybe even the biggest game of the season, still to me was the NBA Cup game when Cleveland came in 15-0, and it's the number one seed, haven't lost a game against the defending champs, and we had gotten off to a really hot start as well. And you got the green court and just a thumping environment in the Garden. It was awesome. And we had started to get inklings that Peyton Pritchard could have a big season, and then he hits one of the biggest shots of the game, which almost felt like a dagger late in the fourth quarter, and the Garden is going nuts. And Scal and I had been planning to use the call, Pritch better have my money, and then he would know the next lyric, so he was ready to go with it. We were waiting for the perfect moment, and that was it. And it all kind of came together perfectly, and the Celtics ended up winning the game. So that's one of my favorite moments of the season. It's a selfish choice because we had so much fun calling that, but you remember that game. That game was massive, especially for, a November game. Like, you just don't get that very often.
Yeah, I thought the crowd, there were some times this season where, you win a championship, you go and run it back again. Even for the team, it's like, all right, you bring in the highest level of intensity every night coming back off our championship. And I think it's the same for the crowd. Like, there were definitely some times this year where the crowd just wasn't at its best. But you went into that game, trailing that team in the standings, stakes in the tournament, all that sort of thing, a lot of hype around Cleveland. And you could tell that was the first time this season where other than opening night and the ring night, of course, where the crowd really popped going into that one. So yeah, that one was an atmosphere for sure that I can, point out that stood out this season. I'm going to the other one though. And I wasn't in the building that night, but I could tell on TV, Lakers Celtics, when Luka came in, when you had that hype for that game, Lakers were playing one of the best, one of the best teams in the league at that time. That was a real moment this season. And it was a great game early. Lakers were pushing them, but they were going at Al again and again and again. I'll always throw it to an Al moment because I feel like his biggest games are some of the most emotional for this team and best to watch and all that sort of thing at this point in his career. And I was just blown away by the stat after, because you saw it. They were going at him again and again and again. It was one of the most targeted statistically games any defenders had, in recent seasons since they started tracking that kind of stuff. And the Lakers put up 0.3 points per possession against them. They just hit a wall going at Horford again and again and again. And that performance to me, I'm a defense guy. I'm a Horford guy. Those were both right up my alley. The Lakers, Luka attacking him again and again, LeBron attacking him again and again, and them just hitting a wall. And they eventually faded from that game late. So that atmosphere, that performance by Horford, probably my favorite individual performance on the team this year. And Horford had a lot of great moments this year at 38, 39, wherever he is at this point. It's unbelievable where he's at going into the postseason again.
It really is like he's a fine wine. He's getting better with age. And I have really enjoyed the off the court stuff for Horford this year. Like the fact that he got to go to, a Florida national championship game and brought his kids and he could enjoy that with them. And I was at a charity event last weekend where Al was the guest of honor, and he's very involved in the community, which we've seen time and again. And I'm thrilled for that guy. And it's easy to forget, Bobby, that last year it did seem like that was going to be his swan song. And I don't know why anybody thought that in hindsight. I kind of caught on the wave too that Al might retire if we win a championship.
It had to be a thought, yeah.
Could not have been further from the truth. He's actually better this season, I think, than he was even last year. Going back to, the start of the season, kind of going chronological order here. When the Celtics were playing the Raptors at home and they took us to overtime, and everyone was like, what is going on here? Why can we not put this team away? And then it's tied on the last possession of overtime, and you don't need a crystal ball to know what's coming. It's going to be a Tatum low percentage shot. And I do think the narrative that he's not clutch in those moments is false, because if you look at the numbers, it's actually better than pretty much anyone else in the league, and that's a hard shot to make. but he settles for a 3 in a tie game, and I almost didn't even want to watch the shot. I wanted to close my eyes and be like, all right, we're going to a double overtime. But thankfully I saw it. He makes it. Crowd goes wild. And we didn't have to stay another 20 minutes for a second overtime. That was the main thing. But that was a great shot. And I think it's part of a season where JT has taken a step forward. And there's no doubt about that, even though his numbers look relatively similar outside of, a slight uptick in assists. I think if you watch the games every night, and I know you do, Bobby, you can see that the way that he kind of has his hand on the steering wheel of these games when he's on the floor and the way he operates in the pick and roll and really is the hub of an offense, to me, he's improved a lot this season. So he's hitting his prime. That game winner against Toronto is just one example.
That's a good one. He hit one against the Pelicans too, right? He had a couple this year.
He did, yeah, the mid-range. Also a really tough shot. Also a game we shouldn't have needed a game winner in, you would think. But JT's there when you need it.
Yeah, that string of games around that time was probably one of the lowlights this year. Some of the late collapse. That was the Derek White 5-second violation game that put them in that position in the first place. And then you mentioned the Hawks games.
Let's just get this out of the way. The worst moment of the season, definitely Sacramento at home, when the team was getting booed and didn't even move to grab a defensive rebound. That was the worst.
Toronto too. Hey, there was a stretch of games in there where you were like, "Ooh, is this really turning bad?" But they came out of it. I'm gonna go early season too, and this one just popped into my head because I talked to him the other day. The Grant Williams games in Charlotte.
Oh yeah,
back to back, where Grant commits this absurd foul on Tatum post game, or near the end of the game rather. And we catch up with him post game, and he's like, "Yeah, it wasn't intentional, and he knows that's my guy, and blah blah blah." And so Tatum doesn't want to talk after the game because he's pissed. Brown talks and has maybe my favorite quote of the year, where he goes, "I thought JT and Grant were friends. I guess not." And then I think Kayla was down there for you guys, Kayla Burton, and she missed the Grant scrum that we had. So she went back over there and found Grant again, who, of course, was happy to talk a second time.
Oh, yeah.
And he had this other awesome quote coming out of that one where he was like, "Yeah, we were ordering some food tonight, and, I was going to have some of those guys over. I don't know if that's going to happen."
Yeah.
So then the next night, was there going to be theatrics? Was there going to be this or that because they were playing again? There really wasn't.
No.
But that was a wild moment against an old friend, and I caught up with him the other day. He obviously tore his ACL, which sucked pretty soon after that, and he pretty much admitted that was an immature play, and him and JT made amends, and he's been rethinking the way he plays and all that. So that was definitely a standout moment from this season, that whole sequence of events that night, from some games that you didn't think were going to be amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking. Nothing, I guess. He was thinking nothing. That's the correct answer. I mentioned that charity event with Al Horford from last weekend. Grant was also there. Grant's involved with this organization called Shooting Touch, which helps build basketball courts, provide opportunities to underserved communities. And they've been to Africa a bunch of times, and they've kind of focused on Rwanda as a place where they want to build basketball courts and help people discover this game. Pat Connaughton's been involved to help build that court out there. And anyway, they had an auction to raise money for the foundation, and Grant actually co-emceed the auction. And I was really impressed. Guy's got a future in media if he wants it. Like, he was smooth. He was really funny.
I heard he talked a lot because when I caught up with him the next day, his voice was gone.
Yeah, yeah, he did. Dude, he did a great job. And I've gone back and forth with Grant. Full disclosure, one of my best friends from college is Jonathan Hoppe, who you might have run into at Syracuse as well, Bobby. Jonathan Hoppe went to high school with Grant at Providence Day down in Charlotte, and Hop loves him. So I've always liked him, just having the mutual friend. He did that thing against us at Charlotte. I was like, who is this? What is he doing? What is he thinking? And again, the answer was nothing. But I actually have a lot of respect for Grant, and I do hope that that's true, that he kind of rethinks the way he plays and doesn't put people in danger. Speaking of putting people in danger, Jaylen Brown needed a new nickname coming into the season, I thought. Because if you look at his basketball reference, this might have changed. Hopefully, if my efforts have paid off, this might have changed. But if you look at his basketball reference, he has 2 nicknames, JB and Old Man. Old Man is the other one. So there was a point earlier this season where if you remember before the new year, he had like a poster every other game. He was just taking bodies. And so I was like, we got to play off this somehow. Like, should we call him the Grim Reaper, like the Mortician, or the Grave Digger, which I know is like a famous monster truck. And I think it's a pretty badass nickname. So I had a few options. I actually ran into him in a hotel early in the season. And I was like, what do you think of the Grave Digger? He's like, oh, I like that. I like that. But you got to say it with a little like Grave Digger. Like you got to have a little extra something on it. I was like, all right, if you like it, then we're doing it. And so he was aware of it. And the next game, I think we were in Chicago, he posterizes Jalen Smith. And then like a week later, he posterized
Detroit, right?
Yeah, he posterizes, I think it was Isaiah Stewart.
Yep.
And he did this, the throat slash, and he got fined for it. And when that happened, I was like, oh my God, I think that's on me. I think that one might be on me. Now, he probably would have done it anyway, but just with the timing of it all, where we're talking about him like putting people in graves, I thought it was kind of funny.
He did at the All-Star game too when they were introducing him.
Yeah, I just think it's cool. Like Jalen, he has such a fun to watch game and such a violent game that I feel like he needed something better than JB or Old Man. And I did tell him when I saw him in the hotel, I said, the only nicknames you have on Basketball Reference are JB and Old Man. And I think he said his grandma used to call him that because he's always been like wise beyond his years, or maybe with the way he walked when he was really young, he looked like an old man. But I'm like, we can do better than that. So I like that it caught on a little bit and he knows about it and maybe it's on. Yes. Yes.
There you go.
He pulled it up. It's on there. Nice.
Boom. Right up there with JB and Old Man. So yeah, there's Drew's impact this season. I don't know if this was on your list because I feel like this one was so easy, but it was another game I wasn't at. I was watching on TV, and if you told me who was going to have the first 40-40 game, 40 points each as teammates on the Celtics in their history, you would have had, I think, Tatum Brown, right? They had 30-30 a million times. I think they have like 25, 26, maybe like 28 at this point in their career together. So they've been stacking those up. And so when Pritchard's going off and White's going off on that, it was a big rest night against Portland?
Yes.
They just stack up 40 each, hitting a million threes. And all of a sudden it's like, you guys are putting up there 40 points, first time in Celtics history as teammates. And I don't think anyone could believe that.
Yeah.
Like how many years this team's been around and how many great teams and players they, Antoine
and how many
Pierce,
great duos, Bobby. I mean, it's incredible.
Pritchard and White have the only 40-40 game in Celtics history after this year. And that's going to be hard to beat for anyone.
That was awesome. Personal bias again. You said you weren't there. I was there, but Mike Tirico was calling the game. So that bastard. I knew, like, dude.
Where were you for that one? Were you there?
I was there. Oh, I was there. Yeah, I was drinking too. It was great. I mean, that's the one.
You have to be a fan that night.
That's the one positive. But I'm watching this unfold. I'm like, are you shitting me? Like Peyton Pritchard, this is my Super Bowl. 40 points for Peyton. But Mike did an amazing job with it. Those calls will live on forever. That was like a really, really special game. And the fun thing about being able to watch it, not having to call it, was I got to sit, on the baseline courtside. And I don't know what it is, Bobby, but when we're calling the game, I guess I'm just thinking about too many things and so focused on like trying to follow the action that it actually, I think you do kind of lose just how special the athletes are on the floor if you're focused on everything else, like trying to analyze the game and keep up with the action. But when you can just sit back and enjoy it, you realize
flying back and forth.
Oh my God, these guys are good and fast, and this is ridiculous. And like milliseconds make all the difference in the world. And I, sitting next to Scal now for a couple of years has helped me understand that. But watching that game, I'm like, dude, is Anthony Simons an all NBA? This guy's really good. And like, Jabari Walker didn't miss any shots. So I thought that was the other thing about that game is Portland brought it. Like they didn't make it easy for the Celtics. They didn't make it like it was a 30-point game and everybody could sit in the fourth quarter. So that was a pretty special one. I have one more game-related one, then I got one more behind-the-scenes one. We've talked about Luke a lot, how much joy it brings everybody when Luke does something special.
There are so many Luke ones you could pick from.
I know we could go with the recent political ad for the Tommy Award, which was just masterfully done, and a great team effort, spearheaded, of course, by Luke. But for me, the one, it's from the end of the season where he made the save, threw it off of someone from the other team, and then gave you the first down signal. That was terrific because it was like everything Luke Cornett just wrapped up into one. It was a crazy hustle effort play, which is why he, won so many Tommy Awards during the season. It was an offensive rebound, and then it was a ridiculously nerdy and hilarious celebration, which is like all the things that Luke has become known for. And I'm sure he set a great screen at the start of that possession too. So Luke, and I'm taking like all of his celebrations under this umbrella, but the first down one I thought was pretty special.
He was unreal. I mean, this season, that's like one you'll have to say like 2025 Luke. And when you're thinking of like the great role player seasons for this team, and again, role player seasons, I'm not trying to, everyone thinks I do Luke hyperbole, but yeah, this was a great role player season for Luke. He did stuff throughout that, he had 4 blocks in that last Charlotte game, starting, and passes and putbacks and dunks and all that. Remember a couple of years ago, all we were talking about with him was the Cornett contest, which was kind of a joke. And now we're talking about him as one of the best, players on the team off the bench. So yeah, crazy evolution for him. I didn't have a Luke moment, of surprise, but Doc, and was this year? We'll throw a Pritchard one in here, another one, where I think it was the same game. Pritchard comes down, end of the clock, hits one of those shots at the buzzer, and Doc's just like hands on his knees, like bent over. One of the best reactions you'll see this year to a play by the Celtics, just demoralized by the play. And then I think it was after the game or before or something like that. It was such a Doc moment where he was like, "Oh, I knew. I circled his name in the meeting before the game. I was like, we got to watch out for this guy." And then whether it was after he said that and he hit that shot and Doc was just like hunched over on the sideline, or he ended up saying that after the game, after I think Pritchard torched them in that game.
Yeah.
That to me was one of the ones that stood out to me from this season. You had an off the court one though you want to finish with?
Yeah, and I hope Cedric Maxwell doesn't get mad at me for sharing this.
Uh-oh, be careful.
Did he get mad about stuff like this?
Go ahead. I'll tell you my story after.
All right. Were you at the premiere of Celtic City?
Yep.
All right, so you remember what I'm talking about. Have you told this story already?
No. I'm careful with the Max stories.
Well, this one, I mean, it was sort of in public, so I feel like it's okay. But Celtic City premiere, and we're watching episode 5. That's the one, like the glory days in the 80s. And they get to the part where Max gets traded for Bill Walton, and they're interviewing Bill Walton. It's got to be one of the last interviews Bill Walton did before he died. And Bill Walton goes, "And I felt so bad for Cedric Maxwell. And to this day, every time I see him, I apologize." And Max, from the back of the room, this is not in the movie, this is in the room, Max goes, "No, he didn't." No, he didn't. And I was talking to him. It was so funny. And I think Max was just joking around, but it was hilarious in the moment. And I talked to him like a month later about it when that episode actually came out. And he was like, "I felt bad for doing that." I was like, "Dude, it was really funny." And you're just having a little fun with it. But the whole thing, the moment, and then hearing Max say that, it was great. So that's one of, and there are a ton of moments that I could share from the plane. We sit next to each other just across the aisle. It's Abby on the window, me in the aisle, then Max on the aisle, and Grandy in the window. And Max and I sit next to each other and have a lot of fun on the plane. But I'm not going to share any of those.
Max might have a word with you. It was 2023. Kevin Durant was on the trade block at the time. And so we're having the debates, do you make that move? Do you trade Jaylen, this and that? And so Max, we're eating there at the dinner table, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I do. I drive him to Logan." That sort of.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, Oh, all right. So I'm like, all right, he's probably going to say that on his next podcast. And Max does a podcast on our network here. I'm like, he's just going to say that on his podcast. So we're debating it. I'll say, all right, someone with the Celtics thinks they should do this trade too. Because I was a big Durant guy at the time. The last couple of trade rumors that there were for him in Brooklyn. So I was all for it too. And I was like, we were talking on the air, and I was like, well, one high-ranking member of the Celtics organization thinks he would do this as well, make this trade for Durant. And so I'm like, I'm not going to say who it is. And Joe Sway, my co-host at the time, was like, I was like, Joe Sway, should I say it? Because they're all like, who said that? And I was like, Joe Sway, should I say it? He's like, say it. I'm like, Cedric Maxwell.
Put him on blast, Bobby.
And 2-3 years later almost, every day I see Max, he reminds me, high ranking Celtics official. He was pissed the first day though. He was like, keep my name out of your mouth.
He hit you with the Will Smith, Chris Rock.
Yeah, he hit me with the Will Smith.
Man, that's funny.
I thought he was just gonna say it on the air, but I guess that was one that was not for the post game show. I have two more here, real quick ones. Shireman's outbreak was awesome. I thought that was a nice one late in the year. Him going crazy, celebrating. That was the Spurs game. No, who was that against?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Yeah, they were down bad.
Yeah,
looking like it was going to be a bad loss there against the tanking team, and he came in and lit it up late, and then was pretty much part of the rotation the rest of the way after not playing much before that, not doing much before that this season. So that gave you a little hope that he could contribute into the future. And since we're looking at the whole year, I know it wasn't the best season for him in the end, but the start of the year, Keita starting, having great games. I'm thinking of the one in Atlanta in particular, where it was his first career start, got pulled from the game pretty quickly for whatever reason, then came back in and had a really nice night. He was awesome early this year. I can't think of one moment in particular with him, but that was a really nice story in like the opening months of the season. Porzingis was out. He was playing a lot. He had a handful of starts for this team. And I'm still hoping, because I really do like him as a player. Obviously, I'm a Luke guy in that debate we were having at that time. But I still think Keita could be a really good player for this team down the line if he continues to develop and hone the system and all that. So I really liked his season as well. Is that it for your list?
Yeah, that's all I got. I mean, there are a ton though, but like, you could just go through the whole schedule and probably pluck one or two from every game.
Yeah, and I probably forgot a handful. There's a great comeback in Philly. Yabu was lighting them up, pounding on his chest, and they came back and won that game.
Hang on a damn second. That was not a great comeback. That was a miserable game. That was
a miserable game.
Yeah,
it was a great comeback.
Yeah, they decided that they were done messing around, and then they made the comeback. So the comeback itself was fun, but there was about an hour and a half there, Bobby, where I was like, we would hit a break and I'd be like, do I suck at this broadcasting thing? Because I cannot make this interesting. This sucks.
Want a similar one?
Yeah.
I was dead that day. I think you gave me a lozenge.
Oh, yeah.
I was barely healthy enough to be at that game, but I was glad I was, because that Jaden Springer game, it was the only Jaden Springer moment for the Celtics in his short career here. But the way he turned that game around against a really good Clippers team, I know they were resting everybody, but there's still some good players out there. That was another awful game, mess of a game, where he just came in and changed everything. It was too bad they traded him like 2 weeks later.
I know. I was watching that from Mount Everest, which is where the Intuit Dome broadcast booth is located. The guys look like ants out there. I was watching it through binoculars, basically.
You guys will never miss a chance to complain about where you're broadcasting from.
Dude, if you think it's bad with us, Bobby, you should hear some of the other people. There is, and I'm not going to put anyone on blast here, there is a play-by-play announcer in the NBA who refused to go back to that building. Refused.
Wow.
Yeah, they had to get a replacement.
The wall worked. I saw a graph earlier this week where players shot worse against the wall than any other arena, including the opposite side of that arena. So it was pretty cool. I liked the going out there. That was a really fun experience seeing that. Two more quick ones. Joe, you had to have a Joe moment, storming the court after, I think, the loss to the Bulls, I want to say. He was pissed.
Yeah. The one where he was yelling at Justin Van Dyne.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was
you ever-
yep, you're right. It was against the Bulls because then we played them in Chicago a couple days later.
I was wondering if he had a great quote after, and of course he did. I was never really worked up, Missoula said. I was fine.
He said he was offering happy holidays, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. That was December 20th. So yeah, he was offering happy holidays.
Yeah.
Never can miss a chance. And then one more. Where is it? I just had it in front of me. I had one. Oh, the Anthony Edwards game where they shut him down and he was pissed about having to pass after.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Was, that was another good one. He's like, they have to double team me. Come on, I want to score.
I know. It was so sad. World's smallest violin. Celtics were not just doubling him, Bobby, but sitting on his left hand. We were watching that game thinking, did they just crack the code on Anthony Edwards? And obviously Steve figured it out, had a terrific season. But the post-game press conference he gave, and I always find him very genuine and very endearing. I love Anthony Edwards. Maybe too much for some Celtics fans when he basically single-handedly beat us in my first season. And I got a couple tweets like, dude, you're from Minnesota, like relax with the Anthony Edwards love. I'm like, would you rather lose to a bum? But anyway, that's a different conversation. But Anthony Edwards, when he was talking about that after the game, like how he was lamenting the fact that he was being double teamed, it reminded me of the clip of Devin Booker and Joakim Noah playing pickup and Devin Booker being like, we're not doubling in pickup. And Joakim Noah comes in, he's like, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Clapping his hands, total maniacal stuff. You can see why Scal fit in on those Bulls teams.
Yep, there's a White House visit. There's an Abu Dhabi trip, which neither of us went on. Forsberg got to enjoy that, and it was reminded us all year. So yeah, it was an interesting year, and now we got a playoff push ahead. But first, well, I guess game one Sunday. Right after game one, unfortunately, it's an afternoon game because Drew's going to need some sleep. He's going to need some buckets of rice, whatever other carbs he can get his hands on out there. It's Marathon Monday coming up on Monday, and Drew Carter is running it. Is this your first marathon?
It is my first marathon, yep.
And
really smart. Run the hardest one as your first one. Everybody says that. Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. He seems well prepared. He seems excited. The weather's looking good, which is more important than anything here. He's running for the Shamrock Foundation, and the link is on your Twitter page. We can put that in the chat right now as well to put some money in for the cause you're running for here. And I guess what did inspire you to run?
Well, I'm recording this on Friday and just picked up my bib from the expo. If you guys want to follow along, I don't know if there's anything on here I shouldn't be showing on camera. Maybe I'll just cover up the QR. I don't know. But 32008.
I'm sure no one's going to try to run it in your place.
I would hope not. But 32008 is my bib number. It's one of the last ones. So hopefully I'm not one of the last ones crossing the finish line, but I'm away we're going off at 11:15. But to answer your question, Bobby, I went to the marathon for the first time last year, and it was a beautiful day. Beautiful day to spectate, maybe not to run. I actually walked into Noah, our mutual friend, Noah Dalzell, who also covers the Celtics. And I can't remember what she was doing. Maybe she was supporting one of her friends who was running. But Noah's a runner herself. And I saw her, and you know how Noah operates. She was walking 1,000,000 miles an hour with her AirPods in. I don't know which pair of AirPods it was for her because she has like 4. She seems to bring them all everywhere. But she was walking a blazing pace with her AirPods in, sending a text or writing an email. And I basically tweeting. I basically had to scream at her, Noah. And I got her attention. And then we walked from one part of the course to another. And we were talking about the weather. And I was like, it's a gorgeous day out here. And she's like, yeah, it's too hot for running though. And last year was too hot to run, but perfect to watch. This year's going to be a little bit cooler. But anyway, I went last year and had such a good time and was really swept up in the moment that I started thinking I ran cross country in high school. I ran track in high school. I still try to work out every day, still run a decent amount. We could maybe raise a little money and do something really fun and run this bad boy. And I told that to a couple people from the Shamrock Foundation right before the parade. Actually, we were on the ground floor of the garden about to head out to the duck boats. And I mentioned that to Dave Hoffman from the Shamrock Foundation. And basically, next thing I knew, I was signed up. And I'm glad it happened that way because I think I don't know if I would have had the cojones to actually do it on my own, but because Dave and then Ari and Amelia and everyone from the Shamrock Foundation like made it so simple for me to get involved with our team, which is Green Runs Deep, running for the Shamrock Foundation. I was like, I really have no excuse not to do this. So that's kind of how it came about. We have a training plan via this guy, Coach Dan from Heartbreak Hill. Like all of the.
Oh, I think he gave me my plan too when I ran. It was a good dude.
Yeah, really impressive dude. So there's no reason that it won't go well aside from you just never know what's going to happen, especially when it's your first time. So hopefully it goes well. But the important thing, Bobby, is that we're raising money for the Shamrock Foundation. And I know it's a little more, nebulous than a lot of the causes people run for because, sometimes they'll run for a specific, disease or illness they're raising money for research for, whatever. The Shamrock Foundation is a bit of like a more big picture thing, but I can just tell you in my experience being around the team, I've already seen firsthand a couple different ways the Shamrock Foundation really impacts the community. You've got early education efforts. They've built facilities in Rhode Island. They built a school and helped people get access to education that they otherwise would not have had early in their development, which is really critical. I was playing trivia last night at a restaurant, and I told the guy who was running the trivia who I'm running the race for. And it turns out he used to work at Boston Medical Center, and the Shamrock Foundation provided a lot of the transportation for the patients to and from BMC. So I was like, man, these people are everywhere. And it's not surprising when you think about the platform of the Celtics combined with the dedication and the effort and the hard work of the people who run the Shamrock Foundation. It's a combination that can lead to some really good stuff being done in the community. And I'm consistently inspired by them. And part of that is inspired to run the marathon. So please donate if you can. It would be great. We've already hit our team goal, but every dollar does help the Shamrock Foundation continue to do good work.
So what's your preparation process been like?
A lot of miles, crushing pavement. There's a 20-miler in there, 18. The tough thing, Bobby, is traveling with the Celtics. It's hard to prepare for this during the season because we'll be on road trips and you got to kind of adjust the schedule. But I went on a 13-mile run in Portland, for example. I ran on the Riverwalk in San Antonio when it was raining. Didn't run in Memphis. Figured I would go to the gym that day. But, I've gotten to explore different cities in a way that I otherwise wouldn't have. So that's been fun. And I do feel like based on my high school cross-country experience, I am trained to go until my body will collapse because that's kind of what it felt like in cross-country practice. I always ran with a group that was faster than I was. So I feel like I'm ready to go, but you never know until you actually do it. So I'm hopeful. I'll need people's support.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, a lot of people get out there for it. That's the most exciting part. Is it's probably the most comparable experience any of us will ever have to playing like a game in the garden or, one of those sort of things. So that was a big reason I did it. I want to experience that. It wasn't a great day for me. It was pouring. It was cold. There weren't as many family members, friends out there on the course as there would have been regularly. So that's something to look forward to with the good weather is people are going to be out there in droves. They're going to get you through the hardest parts of this thing.
Yeah.
And it is going to be really hard. I don't know if I'm ever going to do it again. I did it in 2018 and my body was in rough shape the next few days going back. I was at Syracuse at the time, so I had to fly back the next day and go to class. And I had a tough time walking around campus that next day.
Yeah. In our training plan, it goes all the way up to Marathon Monday, and then it's got the next few days in that week, and it says do nothing for 5 days at least. And I'm like, I think I'm going to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to go off script in that week.
I did nothing for a lot more than 5 days. I'll say that. But yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Might be one and done for me, Bobby, but we'll see. Hopefully it goes great and I'll want to do it again.
Yeah, just try to finish. You're not trying to break any records. You're not trying to, qualify for something. You're just trying to get to that finish line. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be looking out for you out there. And again, we put it in the chat here. Go support the Shamrock Foundation, which Drew is running for, and then go see him out on the course on Monday. I'll try to be out there as well myself on Monday. I don't know exactly where I'll go, but I'll let you know, Drew, and good luck.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Celtics up next. We'll have practice coverage of tomorrow's practice, the final one, walkthrough before game one on Sunday. So follow along with that. We'll have another podcast tomorrow as well, Noah and myself down at the practice facility. We'll look at all the different series around the NBA going on alongside Orlando, Boston, and then game one is Sunday, 3:30. You know the deal. We'll have post-game coverage. We'll be down at the Garden. Drew, you will be calling games 2, 3, and 4 as it's scheduled, right?
Yep. Game 1's ABC only. 2, 3, 4 we got. And then I think the rest of the way in the first round we should have it. I think so.
So check them out on NBC Sports Boston for the round 1 calls. First playoff games for you that you're calling. That's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, Mike Gorman, I don't blame him. He had the road Miami games last year, which I would have done the same thing if I were him. So these will be my first NBA playoff games. I can't wait, dude. Can't wait.
Can't wait either. We got through a long regular season, and we are finally here again. Celtics Magic Sunday, 3:30. We'll have post-game coverage then. And again, following with us at practice tomorrow. Check out Game Time. Use the code CLNS over there for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And for Drew Carter, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been a Friday edition of the Garden Report. Talk to you tomorrow.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to
Same.
feel that
Same.
way.
Yeah.
Let's fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke